All right, welcome to the Impact Effect podcast. We have a special guest this week, my lovely, adoring, beautiful, amazing wife, Kaitlin Morris. I'm super excited to dive in with y'all. But as you know, the first question we ask all our guests, how do you show up in the world and provide impact today?
And I was just telling Jim that I didn't know the answer to this, but as soon as I said that, I realized that I actually do. Right now, I definitely feel like how I show up in the world and create impact is through parenting, which has been a huge transition for me to have such an impact on. You go your whole life knowing that you impact other humans, but when you transition to being a mom or a dad, I feel like your impact is so profound, or it can be, and we hope it is, and in all the best ways. So I definitely feel like my biggest role right now in showing up and creating that impact is for our little two tiny humans.
Two tiny little humans. Who would have thought? Let's go. Let's go. Well, tell us a little bit about it. You know, being a mom, a new mom to a 3-month-old and a 2.5-year-old. How do you specifically impact them day to day?
I feel like every day it's just such a balance because you want to show up perfect and you want to have the right impact and say the right things and teach the right things, and but there's also life, and we have jobs and keeping the house in order and maintaining a relationship and being active in that relationship, and it's so many pieces. And I feel like for me, the biggest thing is just every day trying to check in with myself and remind myself that I can't do all of them perfect. That would I don't think I would sleep. So you show up your best and you put your best foot forward and you try and just support them through all their phases, even when they're this tiny. We have just such tiny ones that make big changes literally every single day. They go to bed one person and they wake up someone different. And so I think the biggest thing right now is just trying to remind myself to be present and to have some grace that I can't do all the things at 100% all the time. And you just have to kind of almost weave between the different roles and just make sure you're showing up for all of them.
You said you had to check in with yourself. Can you tell us a little bit more about that process and maybe share kind of what goes on in your brain and kind of what you go through in hopes that it can positively impact a mom out there?
Definitely. And it's still a work in progress because I'll catch myself being very hard on myself, especially at the end of the day. And you see the memes about it and the reels. But, I think for a lot of parents, that's so real in our minds of going through that playlist of how did I show up today? And did I teach anything constructive today, or did we just survive? Having the entrepreneurship background, the business background, I find that one of the best ways to reground myself, if I'm not able to do it on my own, is to honestly throw in a podcast. And I have certain podcasts that I know will just kick me in the butt and be like, you need to stop feeling sorry for yourself and just, you're doing a great job. Just keep showing up and keep doing your best. And personally, I need that sometimes. I know I do. Right now, I'm trying to intentionally make time for that. I want to do that daily where someone else is just throwing it at me and telling me, it's not even the podcast where it just says you're doing a great job. It's just reminding you that you are showing up and you're doing so many things, no matter what your role is. As a parent, they can all be so different. I find that the people that are worried about whether they're showing up, they're probably doing a pretty good job. You know what I mean? If you weren't worrying about it, I think our hearts are in the right place.
You're probably trying to continuously improve if you're continuously thinking about it, right?
Yeah.
And if it's on your mind, typically that's a signal of importance. It may not just be logic. It may reflect deep down in your heart and sink down into your heart. And I think you're 100% correct. It's like all right, in business, we want to keep leveling up, keep leveling up, keep
Yeah.
leveling up. In parenting, we want to keep leveling up, keep leveling up, keep leveling up. And I think there's a lot of synergies in the two because, you defining your success in business and you defining your success in parenting can be drastically different. So it's like, how do we figure this thing out? What do we relate it to? And there's a million things that I often talk about, and Kaitlin and I talk about how we relate, business back to family. But what are some of those things that you're trying to focus on that have nothing to do with business and don't relate, but just you trying to improve our little humans and their life, their quality of life?
What things am I focusing on outside of business for the tiny humans? Sometimes I feel like that's everything. Man, that's a hard question because I feel like once you get through just surviving the day, I feel like those moments that are left are so small. So I'm coming to the realization that those moments are in the day-to-day routine,
It's
that
huge.
it's how I have conversations. Our 2-year-old, she has full conversations now and full understanding, and how I communicate just what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it and why I can't play right this moment because we all need to eat. And the clothes don't wash themselves, Thankfully she's becoming a little helper, and that makes it fun when she can do things with me. But I feel like I'm learning how to incorporate the learning into the routine itself, and we do still have time to just play and just have fun and just do a puzzle and just color,
So segmenting those play times, making
Yeah.
sure they're present and consistent, but also weaving in learning opportunities to
Yeah.
elevate them, to teach, to coach, to, grow them with what we're doing. It's
Yeah.
funny that you say that because, I notice now Ellie will jump on my lap and say that I'm like at the table with my laptop right here, but we're facing this way. She'll spin and get on the laptop and start, typing stuff and using
Yeah.
it. And instead of like, oh, Ellie, stop, that's my laptop, which that was my first initial reaction. Now I kind of just let her see what she's getting into a little bit. And if I can weave it in rather than react, I think there's an opportunity there to say, hey, when you press this button, you delete this, Ellie, and we don't want to delete this. Daddy just worked on it for, 4 hours.
But it's hard because like she doesn't know what delete even means yet, So then you got to talk through the process.
So, which in turn, you skip steps because a normal conversation you and I would have, but then that's where I think the window of opportunity opens, right? Because then it's like, okay, well, if I actually take a step back and think, well, she doesn't know what delete is. She doesn't know what the Xbox is, to cancel out of the menu. She, is slamming on the space bar. Which in turn will break it. So yeah, there's a ton of opportunities to teach and learn. Knowing that you're weaving it in and out, do you ever have rhythms or do you try to create rhythms in your day to kind of bring you back to center or to focus on playtime? I know I'm super rhythmic and it's got to be concise, and that's kind of how I accomplish things, but I also know that not everybody's like that.
We both know you need your schedule and it has to go on the schedule. And I am very much not like that. You know that. I am a go with the flow, and that works great to adapt and to constantly go through the change. But it can also be challenging when you are the type that just flows with it. Sometimes the day will completely flow right past you. And that's where I'll be at the end of the day. And I'm like, what constructive things did we accomplish today? And the honest answer is always that there were so many constructive things. It's just not always what your mind pictures those need to look like or those are supposed to look like. That's where I just have to have those pep talks with myself that every single moment is a moment of learning and a moment of expanding and a moment where they're just spending so much time with us. For them, I mean, that is so huge. That even though they're in the midst of our workday and our workflow and Like she's going to be an entrepreneur probably 15 years before you and I were, which is just wild to me. But, she's already picking up on those things and she's going to continue to learn them so fast. And eventually he's going to be right behind her. And I think that every little thing that we are teaching them about not only just play and fun, but also how to build a business and how to create something from nothing and how to build something that you love and something that you want to show up for every day. And it's like so much fun that you don't even know that you're working. And, I think all those things are teaching them such valuable lessons. While also, our job is just to also make it fun. And like you said, not snapping and not freaking out about the little things. And I have to constantly remind myself every single day. You know that. We talk about it, and it's very challenging.
Well, I think the significant difference in that and what you're mentioning is the fact that you're identifying it, right? And by identifying those things, you can change those things. So, how do you look present, or how do you live in the present and focus on these things in the moment? I think that's the difficult piece. And you had mentioned, realizing what you've accomplished and all those little things that your brain might not register. But when you just take a step back and think through it, it's like, wow, I did this, and this, and this adds up to this, and this needed to be done in order for this to happen, or for Jim to do this. And there's that ripple effect and that impact. And I think that's the hardest piece, is because, and we just had an example of this yesterday, right? With Ellie, we had a Monday morning coming into the week, woke up super early, was going into the sauna, going to hit all the stuff that I wanted to start the day, get my mind right, little reading, follow my routine, have guests come in for a podcast, shoot some content, multiple meetings, going to an event, attending another event, and those things didn't happen. Right, Ellie, we had to bring to the doctors, and to just focus on the present and realize we cared for our child, we took action. There wasn't a moment where we said, "Oh well, let's just take this meeting and we'll weave it in." No, it was like, "Hey, this is the focus for right now. Maybe in the afternoon we can keep some stuff, but let's cancel everything right now in the morning, in the first half of the day." And then I realized later in the day, like, oh, anxiety's starting to hit, and I'm starting to feel that pressure. We didn't do this. We need to reschedule that. This didn't happen. Oh, I need this on this schedule, blah, 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 right? And in that moment, I was like, I'm not letting this anxiety creep in. I'm not letting this happen, because at the end of the day, we elevated our child. We did what was necessary and what we needed most. And everything else can come after that, right? And if you've got clients that you can't reschedule on because your child's sick, or you can't, reach out to them and be honest and tell them what's going on, then I urge you to find clients and align with people and build those relationships where you can have those true, honest conversations, right? And just to keep the course. There was some beautiful things that happened throughout that day that worked in harmony and synced, and we got an appointment at this time and it worked with the schedule, and we could do this and we could keep something else in the afternoon, and Kaitlin went here and I went there, and then we got back with the team, and we had to exchange that conversation to be like, hey, things are working. Like, it could have been worse. We did get to accomplish that or do this, and we did get to pivot here, and this worked out, and this was aligned. And I think it's hard to think of those things in the moment. But I think, just like any miracle, they're happening all around us all the time. Are you paying attention to it? I think that's the big question.
You just got to roll with chaos when you have littles. You got to be very flexible.
Being a parent for a couple of years now, reflecting back on the last 2.5 years, what is something that you wish you knew sooner and you potentially didn't have to experience to learn the hard way, that you could potentially share with a mom or a dad, or maybe even someone becoming parents here in the next month or 6 months? We've got several friends we're excited to hear from soon, and several that just had kids. What can you say to those folks to help them with parenting in these moments?
I feel like that's something I'm still learning, even just 2.5 years into it. I don't know what my answer is to this because there are so many struggles, but a lot of that is just you're learning a whole new process and a whole new adventure. And, like, especially as a mom going through postpartum is what hit me the hardest the first time. It was just, you and I had gone from being entrepreneurs our whole life and working and used to everything happening when we wanted, how we wanted. Like, you could have that schedule. You could expect things to go exactly the way they were going to go. And overnight that shifted to where our entire world was now different, and it was different forever in all the best ways, but it was a big shift when it comes to what does work look like now, and how does work happen now, and how do we adapt to this and still be able to be entrepreneurs and to still do the things we want to do, but also be parents. And I feel like that's a balance that a lot of families, find themselves struggling to figure out. We're still figuring it out. Two and a half years later, we're still trying to figure out what is the right balance. How do we do all the things at the same time? And I wish I had a perfect answer for how to do it, but like I said, we're still adapting to it.
I think my answer is trial and error.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's a big piece to understand. When you're a new parent or when you're going to be a parent and you hear certain things and certain people say, oh, we've got kids now, we can't do that. Or, oh, we're about to have another child, we'll never be able to hang out or go do this or do that or come to this event or see you here or, blah, blah, blah. And I think that's the biggest gift that I would share with anybody else is to not limit yourself, but to understand to accomplish something like that just takes time, heavy communication with your partner, and planning. And to not put yourself in a situation where if it goes awry or it goes sideways, that you beat yourself up. And I think I did that a little bit in the beginning. It was like, all right, it was working, and then your child gets a little bit older and something doesn't work, right? And then it's like, well, we can't do this now. We're never going to be able to do this. That's not the case because things change so rapidly. So, just plan, put the work in before the work, but don't limit yourself to not doing certain things. I think you're going to go through that, whether it's one child, two child, even your third child, fourth child could be drastically different. But I know for us right now with the second child, right, it was like, whoa, I want to be more present. I want to assist the family more. I don't want to travel more. For me, purposefully, but that was so new and I didn't know how to handle that, right? And it was really tough. My psyche, my mental, I've never experienced not going 100 miles an hour. And Caitlin's laughing because she had to deal with that transition and change. But knowing when to slow down, being okay to slow down, and knowing when to speed up and being okay to ramp up and speed up, to take that opportunity, to take advantage of those times, but always constantly understanding that change is coming and it continues to change. I would urge you to continue to follow your dreams. The pace and the schedule may be different. Yeah. What do you have to say about that, Kaitlin?
Very much.
Why don't you share kind of what we're doing with our business and our passions and kind of our timelines, right? Because we just went through this pretty recently.
We essentially created a way for us to do the things we love and to continue to work, to continue to grind, be those entrepreneurs that we love to be, and make it work with our family. I don't want to not have time, to be with our kids all the time. That's just something that's very heavy for me It's high priority. I know it's heavy for you too.
Of course.
And I'm very proud of us for creating something out of nothing again. Right now, we're in that phase where you grind. It's a lot of late hours, or, in our case, sometimes it's very early morning hours. When you're working with a baby and a 2-year-old, you have to find the time to make it work or else it won't. And I've been very proud of us for how we've been executing it so far. And we are continuing to refine everything. And my biggest thing with this, and we focused on it since day one, since we sat in that coffee shop and started making plans for what do we want to build and how do we want to build it, was our focus on building something that we're going to enjoy doing. We've both been in enough businesses and enough new ventures to know that how you design it from the very beginning matters. You don't want to wait until you're in the trenches and realize that what you've built, you don't even want to show up for. And I have, of all the businesses we've ever done, this is the most fun I've ever had of creating something that we enjoy doing. Like, I'm in that phase right now where I don't feel like work is work. And I was just, I was telling you, I listened to podcasts for my mindset, and I was just listening to an entrepreneurship mindset podcast talking about leadership, talking about, those upper roles in companies of how we design things and how we create things. And she was diving into, sometimes you don't work a 9 to 5 because you don't want to. You want to work 24/7 because you honestly just like what you're doing. And I feel like that's where we are right now, that
Totally.
I'm having fun. Are you having fun?
I'm having a ton of fun. No, I am. I think the struggle in the business is adaptation amongst working styles, right? When you work with your spouse, how we communicate on a personal level and how we communicate on a business level is drastically different. More so drastically different in my case, right? So ding, ding, ding. I'm literally owning this one here. This is my fault. I'm very direct. I'm very aggressive. I want things fast. I want your best, and I want to push you. I don't like giving answers to solutions that you can find on Google or online. I'm going to urge you to go check those sources before we engage in a 15-minute conversation around that. Some people think that's being an asshole. I agree with that. There's certain ways to talk to people. There's certain instances where someone's come to you for help several times and they just want your help. They want you to literally just solve the problem. But if you do it for the right reason, and I think if you push people, they're going to be more relentlessly resourceful themselves. They're going to be able to solve problems faster, which in turn can create more efficient output. How I communicated that to Kaitlin in the beginning was incorrect. So I had to work on that. And Kaitlin, her style is to have a conversation around some ideas. My style is to come with solutions and 50 different versions, hash them out as quick as possible, and then go create and build. So I had to adapt to that and understand that I'm moving just faster and my expectations are faster. And Kaitlin wants to have a dialogue around it. So that's helped me, actually. It's helped me understand that even at an executive level, there may be someone that I have to approach like that, especially Kaitlin, right? So I think with all the amazing things and all the fun that we're having, and creating and building, there's still challenges. And what I want to share with you is you can have a ton of fun and do hard things. You can have a ton of fun and come up against challenges. I think when you start to lose having fun is when you lose someone to climb those hills and grab a hold of those challenges and conquer them with, right? So, I'm grateful to have Kaitlin to run uphill with. I'm grateful to have team members that will do research and support and be there to assist and do it quickly. But I also know that as we continue to grow and as we continue to bring on, another leadership role here shortly, there's going to be different learning styles, and I've got to adapt to that. So it's been challenging. I've learned a lot. I've made mistakes. I also think we've crushed a ton of stuff. And right out the gate, I think that the most energizing thing about opening a business, the most energizing thing about connecting with individuals and having conversations and having sales instances when you're pitching and doing sales, the coolest thing is when you feel the energy back, and when you're like, people are like, oh man, you're saying what everybody wants to hear, right? Like, oh, you're not bullshitting. Oh, you are being honest that you are using AI, but you're putting a different spin on it and making it unique and our own. Oh, you are addressing the fact that you should be fired at some point, and we're here to help you hire internally and build your business and your culture and your growth, not just hit you on a reoccurring revenue model where you're paying us an invoice every single month forever. And just having that honest, raw, real approach and getting that energy back that people need this and people want that has just been such a joy, because we're truly impacting people, and it's a positive impact, and we're just hearing it at such high levels that I'm just excited. I'm super excited about it.
And you were making it seem like you're the only one who's had to, adapt your style of working, but I think it absolutely goes both ways. I'm learning your work speed as well, and I'm trying to work on ways that I don't need to talk through as many topics in order to get to where I need to go. Or, learning ways to kind of talk through that almost either with myself or with our other team members, so that I'm not utilizing your time for that. It's absolutely both ways. I just like hashing out things with you. It's like our ways of having conversation. And I think it almost runs into a blend of, we are married and we are with each other very much right now, especially working together. So you're trying to find that balance of still talking to each other and having like high level conversations, but you also have to give and choose like which conversations do we need to prioritize so that we're getting the projects done, so that we're making the progress that we need, because we both have very high standards for how these projects are going to turn out, how things are going to get executed when you're in that system of creating your systems and making sure your flow does flow exactly the way that everyone on the team can adapt with. It definitely has challenges, but the more that we learn to, adapt to both of our styles as well as other team member styles, it helps us create a system that is going to get so many things done. Some really cool projects that I'm already excited to work on.
I think too, like timing of conversations is something that we've got to really focus on, right? Like, should I bring up, business related conversation when it's 7 a.m. and we're sitting down with Ellie and James and having breakfast, right? I've got to learn to stop engaging in those situations and enjoy the personal side. Finish up dinner, finish up breakfast and say, hey, you've got a couple minutes, let's dive into work. So I think that's also just new. And I think if we can focus on the timing of those conversations and just have open communication when it works or doesn't work for each other. I keep thinking back of like communication, right? In business and life, everybody says it's so important, so important. But like, how many people are actually practicing that? How many people are actually putting themselves in situations where you have to communicate at a very high level, efficiently, effectively, and quickly, essentially? I would urge you to put yourself in those situations as much as possible, because you learn so quick and you're going to mess it up. And we did mess it up, and we did, fumble, and we did have some testy arguments. And then the thing about it is too, is like, it's language, right? Communication. What I realized in this is communication. Okay, it's a great word. Everybody understands what it means, but it's really language. It's really language, because everybody knows they need to communicate. Everybody knows when there's a breakdown or there's misinformation, problems happen, and it starts with communication. but what is the language you're using, right? Instead of me saying, hey, Kaitlin, I don't want to talk about business right now. We're supposed to be enjoying a family breakfast. Like, that's terrible language. It's terrible tone. But if I just say, hey, babe, can we chat about this after we wrap up with family breakfast? I'm excited about it. And, I definitely have some opinions I want to share. Well, that's just a no-brainer, right? And she's not going to feel offended or upset with me. I'm not going to feel triggered, like, why'd you bring this up? But it accomplishes the goal, right? We have that conversation around work and business after breakfast. And I think I needed to work on that, and I'm always improving with that, because naturally my brain just wants to solve the problem, whether that's type A, ADD, whatever you want to diagnose this guy with no hair at 35 years old. But I think, I've got to learn what type of language to use and when to use it. And I think that is just always an important lesson in everything we discuss and chat about in life.
Absolutely.
All right. I've got one more question for you before we wrap up. You said you're excited. You said, parenting is so important. It's how you feel you're making the most impact. You're a business owner. We just started a company. Communication's important. Timing, all those things. With all that being said, with your business and parenting, do you think that there's going to ever be a conflict amongst the two?
There absolutely could be, because, our kids are different every single day. They're growing and changing, and like I said earlier, every day when they wake up, we don't know what to expect and we don't know how it's going to go. But my goal is that we continue to build this in a way that we have options. That's what I really want. I want the options of what does make the most sense, and I don't want to be pushed into a corner of making decisions around family time. I want there to always be a flow and always have that flexibility, so that, if we want to lean into more help with the kids, that we can lean into it. That if we want to lean into just having them around and making that work 24/7, that we can find a way to make that work. And I think with what we're building, we are keeping options open. And like I said, my goal is that as we continue to build, as we continue to grow, that those options stay in full force. And I want us to have as much time as possible with our tiny humans, because they're getting a little less tiny every single day. And I don't want to miss it, and I want them to be there through our growth and through the business changes. And like I said, just have them right alongside us, so that they see what it's like to own a business, and they see what it's like to run a business and to accomplish projects and take on new projects, and to, build something that you've always wanted to build. I want them to experience that.
I love it. I love it. So knowing that there's conflict amongst being an entrepreneur and a mom, raising a family, building a business, how are you going to handle that emotion that comes with conflict, knowing that it's inevitable and it's going to pop up in the future?
Oh, I'll probably have to have a lot of pep talks with myself that we're doing a great job, and we are creating a great balance, and we are showing up, and we are being present, and we are attempting to do all the things at the same time, and that it's okay if we can't be 100% in any of those roles all at the same time. You can't. You have to, like I said, you have to weave. And I'm just going to keep reminding myself to be flexible and to give myself some grace, because you need it, we both do.
Totally. I think it's one of those things where it ultimately just comes down to, if you're putting in the effort, like you said in the beginning, if you're thinking about how to impact your family positively, if you're keen to it, you're focused on it, then you're going to accomplish it one way or another. It may not be perfect. It may not seem exactly like the vision you had for accomplishing it, but keep pushing. If you need a pep talk, feel free to give yourself, some love, because we all know we talk worse to ourselves than anybody else. I wouldn't imagine some of the things come out of my mouth that I've said to myself about myself. So give yourself some positive reinforcement, focus on that goal, and I think you'll make an amazing impact. Kaitlin's making an amazing impact in this family. She's made an amazing impact on me. I wouldn't be here today without her. I wouldn't be the person I am today without her. I wouldn't be as healthy. I wouldn't have gotten a lot of things fixed and corrected in my life. So thank you for being here on the Impact Effect podcast, Kaitlin. It's amazing to do an episode with my wife.
Right.
I hope you all have found it valuable and allowed us the opportunity to pour out our heart. So thank you, and we'll see you on the next episode of Impact Effect Podcast.